Hello and welcome to Bite-Sized Greek Genealogy. I'm Carol Kostakos Petranek from Spartan Roots.
And I am Georgia Stryker Keilman of Hellenic Genealogy Geek. Today we are presenting episode 6, Information in Greek Marriage Records and Dowry Contracts. Before we begin, let me remind you to download the handout located in the YouTube description for the video. All right, these are a few dates to keep in mind when researching marriages in Greece. Civil records were not allowed in Greece until April 14th, 1982, meaning only religious ceremonies prior to that. Dowries were mandatory until January 25th, 1983, when the Greek parliament officially abolished the dowry. The marriage process. Local priests would prepare a marriage application stating that the marriage request was legitimate. The Metropolitan would approve and issue a license stating that the marriage could take place. The local priest would perform the marriage ceremony and return the signed marriage documents to the Metropolis. And the marriage was entered into a local parish register, and the Metropolis would enter it into the official register book. We will look at all these individual documents coming up.
For 3 summers, I worked as a volunteer at the Metropolis of Sparta, digitizing their marriage records from 1835 to 1935. The first year, Gregory Kontos and I digitized the marriage register books. 1 year later, I returned and photographed all of the marriage documents, and the third year, I digitized all the village church books that were under the auspices of the Metropolis of Sparta. The books and documents were very old, and many were in poor condition. But we were fortunate that this Metropolis in Sparta, unlike others that we had contacted, had its documents organized by year, and they were kept in boxes in the basement. We're sharing this information so you can understand the status of old records in Metropolis offices when you write for information. It's important to give at least an approximate date of the marriage because the register books in some metropolises are kept by date and in others they're kept by village. Without a date, there's no one who can take the time to look through entire books for your ancestors. The marriage records are now preserved and are available online at MyHeritage, and the village church books for Laconia will also be uploaded in the future.
All right, Greek marriage records, transcribed and indexed. There's not a lot, but here we go. MyHeritage has the Holy Metropolis of Monovasia and Sparta from 1835 to 1935. Greek Ancestry has Kefalonia and the Ionian Island from 1841 to 1932. They also have Lefkada from 1840 to 1900. And they have Keratina in Arcadia, the 1914 municipal registers, which include marriage information. Writing for a church marriage record. Write to the Metropolis that includes your village. Information on locations and contact information is on the handout link in your YouTube video description. Information to include: names of both husband and wife, including their father's names, place of origin of the husband, and place of origin of the wife. This is very important because most likely her parish priest made the application for the issuance of the marriage license. And then the marriage date. If you don't know the date of the marriage, base it on 1 year prior to the birth of the first child, and then note that it's an approximate date. So this is a letter, an example of a letter that I received from the Metropolis in Arcadia confirming the marriage information. Note that this is a form letter. It's filled out by the Metropolis. The information is taken directly from the marriage register at the Metropolis. It shows the date of marriage, the priest, the church, and then who the couple was that got married, in this case, crowned, married Demetrius N. Choni and Athanasia G. Mignati. Marriage took place in Capodelli on April 24th, 1893, in the municipality of Tegias, and that this is given for the use of Georgia Keilman.
When I was digitizing the Sparta Metropolis marriage records, I came across this document and asked the clerk to explain it to me. It caught my attention because of the little chart that the priest had written. He explained that marriages in the Orthodox Church are not allowed between people who have a family connection within 6 dots of a common ancestor. The way this works is that you count the number of dots between the groom and the bride, including their common ancestor. In this example, Anastasia, the purple dot, is the 4th generation down from the common ancestor, and Vasilios, the blue dot, is the 3rd generation down. 4 plus 3 is 7. So this total of 7 dots, including the common ancestor, means their marriage is allowed. And I love that the priest put an arched row of tiny dots to ensure that the chart could not be misread. This example shows another reason why it's so important to look at any marriage backup documents and to get them translated.
Let's look at the Sparta MyHeritage marriage records collection. The information you see on your initial search results was indexed from the marriage register. It includes names of the groom and bride, along with the father's name or initial, and their birth location. Additional information can be found on the digitized copy of the register you can see on the bottom of the page. The registers include information such as whether it is the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd marriage for each individual, and the later books in 1900s may have more information. Important. If there are additional documents pertaining to this marriage, you will see the number example 1 of 3 in that little red box there, immediately above the register image. You are really lucky if there are additional documents. They can contain very interesting information, as you will see on the next few slides. This is a copy of the marriage register attached to this record. It shows, it's on line 66. The date of the marriage was March 29th, 1893. The names, Anastasios Kritikos and Kondylo Manosakou, and that it was the 1st marriage for each of them. Anastasios was born in Sparta, and Kondylo was born in Agriani. And the priest was Christos Sousanis. Okay, so here's step 1 that we discussed earlier. The MyHeritage collection includes additional documents for this particular marriage. The Greek document shown on the upper left, this is step 1. The local priest prepares a marriage application. We recommend that you have all attached documents translated. You never know what tidbits of information you will find. I had Gregory Kontos at GreekAncestry.net translate the document for me and have highlighted important information on the right. In this case, the fathers are both deceased, so the mothers gave their consent to the marriage. We now know that both fathers died prior to the marriage date in March 1893. It lists the groom and bride's names and shows the father's names. Notice that Anastasios goes by 2 different names, both Kritikos and Fuskidakis. It states that there is no impediment of kinship, meaning they're not related, and they are both married for the 1st time. They are of a legitimate age to be married, and the document is signed by 2 guarantors and 2 witnesses. It states that the mother of the bride, Maria, wife of the late Yannis Manousos, is illiterate, and she designated someone else to sign the document for her. It also states that the mother of the groom, Marigo, wife of the late Yannis Kritikos or Fuskidakis, is illiterate, and she designated someone else to sign the document for her. Now we know the first names of both mothers and the fact that they were both illiterate. The groom's signature is on the lower right-hand side. Note, this document is not signed by the groom, Anastasios Kritikos or Fuskadakis, but instead it was signed by his brother, Paniotis Fuskadakis. Why? So I was thinking about this and I started to remember a family story. Could this be the answer? The family story is that Anastasios and Kondylo ran off and stayed with one of his relatives. When her brothers found out that they were furious and came looking for them. They were pounding on the door of the house where they were staying and threatened to break it down. Could the two families have arranged the wedding with the priest without either Anastasios or Kondylo present? Could this have been a shotgun wedding, as we would say in the US? This document is dated March 18th, and the marriage didn't take place until the 29th. We will never know for sure. Okay, so here's documents 3 and 4 combined. So the Archbishop grants permission to the priest to perform the marriage sacraments. So in the top box it says, you are given permission to marry Anastasios Yanis Kritikos or Fuskadakis, resident of Sparta, with Kondylo Yanis Manosakou, both married for the first time. And then at the bottom, on the right-hand side, the priest, after he's done the ceremony, writes, village priest signs that marriage conducted on March 29th, 1893, and the priest's name. Okay, this story continues. Kondylo and Anastasios. They had 5 children. In 1905, Anastasios goes to the US and never returns to Greece. Kondylo gets remarried. So what happened was in 1922, Kondylo sent her cousin Nick Manousos to give her husband Anastasios a message that if he didn't return to Greece, he'd been gone for 17 years, she would get a divorce and marry someone else. So in 1923, Kondylo received an ecclesiastical divorce and married Yorgos Stephanopoulos on December 20, 1923 at St. Nikon Greek Church in Sparta, Greece. Let's take a little deeper look into those documents we just saw. The important parts are highlighted there. It says that the marriage of Anastasios Yanis Fuskadakis or Kritikos, resident of the municipality of Sparta, and his wife Kondylo, daughter of Yanis Manosakis, resident of Sparta, having been declared civically dissolved according to decision number 252 of 1921 of the First Instance Court of Sparta, finally and irreversibly, according to certificate number 9026 of November 16, 1923, that we received by the First Instance Attorney of Sparta, this marriage is declared spiritually dissolved by us as well. Therefore, the ecclesiastical divorce is issued after the petition of those interested.
Civil marriage records are kept at civil registry offices known as elixarchian, and these are under the direction of the Ministry of Interior. Civil birth, marriage, and death records were kept beginning in 1925. In other words, the government began keeping these records starting in 1925. Before then, religious records were the official vital record documents. In a civil marriage record, you will find the names of the groom and the bride, including their fathers, the date, place, and church of marriage, and the names of the priests and witnesses. Now refer to your Greek document locator, the second section, which is going to be in your handout for further information about civil records. Now let's talk about dowries. A marriage dowry, or prika, was a custom that was adapted from the Eastern cultures. Although it was outlawed in 1983, it was prevalent during the time when most of our ancestors in Greece were married. Back then, the roles of men and women were defined by a patriarchal society. Men were farmers and landowners and shepherds. or they worked in handcrafts such as making baskets or ropes or leather items. Women were homemakers. When a new union was formed, both the bride and the groom were expected to contribute items needed to establish their new home. The bride's dowry provided everything a new household needed: linens and clothing, cooking pots, dishes, even property and animals. The groom provided a house and an income for his family. Thus, both contributed what they could to the new marriage. To help you understand these dowry customs, I'm going to share parts of an article written by Elias Papathanassopoulos in 1964 and published in Laconia magazine. So here are some of the things that he pointed out. Marriages were arranged by matchmakers. Once both sets of parents agreed, the bride's father prepared a list of the dowry items. The matchmaker then put that dowry agreement in a colorful scarf along with sugar-coated almonds and took it to the groom's house. Shots were fired to alert the village that the matchmaker's journey had begun. Upon arriving at the groom's house, more shots were fired. The scarf was opened and the dowry agreement was read aloud. All in attendance would take the almonds and then throw money to the matchmaker for her work. Singing and dancing and feasting began, and this engagement celebration followed at the bride's house as well. There, the first official gifts from the groom were presented to the bride. The dowry items were placed in cloths, tied in bundles, and put in chests, and you can see that in the upper left-hand picture. The dowry was sprinkled with flowers, rice, and more sugar-coated almonds. On Friday, the bride's family would receive relatives and friends who came to admire the dowry. The dowry was taken to the groom's house on Saturday, and the wedding was on Sunday. There was a grand procession with singing and music from the groom's house to the church on the way to the wedding. The bride and her family arrived at the church where she was handed over to the groom. After the ceremony, rice, almonds, and flowers were thrown. The procession, singing, went to the groom's house for a feast and dancing, and then they went to the bride's house to continue the celebration. If the bride was from a different village, her family rode to the church on animals as music played, people sang, and gunshots announced the wedding. What a grand occasion these weddings were for our ancestors in Greece. Now, let's look at an example of a dowry. On July 11, 1864, 4 men gathered at the office of Konstantinos Dimopoulos, who was a notary of Sparta, to execute a dowry contract between Nikolaos Athanasios Kostakos of Sykaraki, who was the groom, and Panayotis Kavouras of Aias Ioannis, who was the father of the bride, Marigo. And 2 witnesses were also there. Now, this dowry contract is 4 pages. This on the screen is just page 1. Let's take a closer look at what's on the other pages. As the groom provided the house and income, the bride brought the items required to start their new household. I won't read every item in Marigo's dowry, but it is fascinating to see the items listed here. The items highlighted in yellow correspond to the photos on the right. And take a look at how the exact number of every item was counted. For example, 2 men's vests, 2 men's fustanella, 10 women's skirts, etc. The dowry continues on this page. Here we see a list of clothing, bed linens, and cooking utensils, again exactly enumerated. The photos show the cooking and the roasting pans that were common for that time. The list of Marigo's dowry continues. There's a total of 43 items. On this page, notice the land, olive, and orange trees that were given by her father. Now, I want you to note this is not a normal dowry, but it is a sizable dowry and indicates that the bride's family had financial means. The total value in 1864 was 1,963 drachmas. Today, that amount would be approximately $15,000. A very sizable dowry indeed. Dowry contracts are fascinating documents and can be found in the notary collections at the GAC offices. Some offices have begun putting notary files online, and others have published books. This is a page from the Archive of Laconia website. Books and publications are listed. Some are in PDF format and can be downloaded, including 2 books on notary files in Laconia. Remember to refer to your handout for more information on how to access these types of documents. The website of the Archives of Arcadia has 2 documents online that you can download. One is an abbreviated list of its collections, and the second is a list of its notary records. Each archive office has different documents on its website. This is an example of a partial translated list of the notary collections held by the Archives of Arcadia. It gives the name of the notary, the dates of his term, and the collection information. We can't tell from here if any of these collections are digitized, but they are all on site at the archive office. If you identify a notary collection of interest, contact the archives to see if there's an index of documents for that attorney.
Okay, in summary, write to your Metropolis, and you'll receive a form letter filled out like the one shown you earlier. You will not receive copies of documents. If you have family from a village that belongs to the Metropolis of Sparta, look at the backup documents. Have them translated so you can read them and analyze the information. The municipal registers can give you an idea of a marriage year. And remember that the surnames are fluid. Manousos was spelled 3 different ways on those marriage agreements, and the groom went by 3 different names, Fuskadakis, and Ridikos. Okay, thanks for watching. The next video in this series is Memory Eternal, Death and Cemetery Information in Greece.
And don't forget to download the handout and feel free to leave comments or questions on either the YouTube video or on Hellenic Genealogy Geek. We'll see you next time for another bite of Greek genealogy. Bye now.